up a dive. Feel the vibe, get ready to ignite. Untold stories in the airways, flying through the night. Experience voices, tales so bold. Streaming live, the truth unfolds. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's a wide variety. Share and subscribe. Join the side where truth can't hide. Aliens in the attic, UFOs in the sky. Cryptids lurking, oh my, oh my. Ghosts in the hallway, whispering your name. The paranormal, the unexplained. Become a VIP, get the inside scoop. Unlock the mysteries, be part of the group. Live streaming stories, they're talking to you. Super chats buzzing, join the group. Untold Radio Network, the secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's a wild member. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can hide. So if you've got the guts and you want to explore, tune into the untold, it's what you're looking for. From aliens to ghosts and all that's unseen. Untold Radio Network, where the world's mysteries remain.
Good morning, monsters, and welcome to this week's episode of Monsters on the Edge here on the Untold Radio Network. I am your host, Barnaby Jones of Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society. Today's episode, we have a wonderful guest joining us. She's been on the Paranormal Spectrum before, but she had a brief topic that I wanted to cover in a full episode on the Canadian Dogman. So all kinds of cool folklore and legends of Indigenous people up there, as well as her own personal experiences. So that'll be coming up in just a minute here. But first, guys, if you want to meet my team in person, we are going to be coming up this weekend. That's right. It is finally here this coming weekend, May 9th, 10th, and 11th in Appleton, Wisconsin. It is Cryptids, Anomalies, and Paranormal Convention. Stacy Brown Jr., Miranda Young, Scott and Hannah Violet, Chad Lewis, myself, Keg, Rick, and Barbara from my haunted hometown, as well as my guest today was part of that as well. And the one and only Angela Zabel will be doing a psychic gallery reading that evening. It is also the premiere, finally, of the brand new documentary, The Hairy Man of Dairyland, Wisconsin's Bigfoot.
Right here in the road, and it was right on the line, standing right there.
Whatever it was breaking trees, breaking branches, and I've never heard that before.
And from the basement door, I was like, Louie, I'm pretty sure there's a footprint out here.
And that's when the rocks started coming out of this tree line.
All I seen was hair. And it was like arched over right here.
And then out of nowhere we hear this loud, like earth-shaking grunt.
It rolled its shoulder and grabbed the ground and pulled itself towards my vehicle.
And I heard a plunk, and I come over here, and that squash was laying about right there in the middle of my garden, you know.
walked in that in bare feet at 30-degree temperature.
Did you see that? What was that? I saw something dark in the light from the right to the left. It was big. Could be the little different thing.
That's right, guys. And if you can't make it out in person to check out the convention, you can get yourself a virtual ticket and live stream all of our speakers either live during the convention, or you can watch them at your convenience after the convention has ended. This ticket is just $5. Otherwise, you guys can still get advance tickets for the convention. If you're anywhere near Wisconsin, you can come on out for just $30 in advance or $40 at the door. All right, guys, then June 7th, we are heading down to Chicago, Illinois for the Chicago Paranormal Convention. It's going to be a great time down there. 80 plus vendors, plus all kinds of great speakers. Myself, Chad Lewis, will be down there, and many more. And then I got several library presentations coming up this summer. Lodi, Wisconsin, Cedarburg, Wisconsin, UFO Days in Elmwood, Wisconsin, July 26th. I will be back in Illinois for SilCon in September, Van Meter Visitor Festival, Van Meter, Iowa in September as well. And of course, the Neenah Public Library, a very unique one. Actually, we are doing a paranormal presentation followed up by a paranormal investigation at the library. So it'll be really cool, fun time for you guys to come on out and check that out if you're interested. But guys, today my guest is Morgan Knudsen. She is associated with all kinds of great television shows, including My Haunted Hometown, as I said originally, and many others. She uses her outgoing tell-it-like-it-is approach in determining haunted locations and creating solutions for people involved, as well as having hands-on experiences in both research and education in the field of cryptozoology. Her programs now practiced in 3 different countries and a part of numerous social work and psychology secondary education courses in Edmonton. Morgan she received an award from the city of Edmonton for outstanding service in 2008 and graduated from the these are big words, Alvarado Zingron Institute for Research and Education 2 years in a row, receiving 2 graduate certifications in distinction in parapsychology. She is also a regular contributor to a #1 magazine in the UK, Haunted Magazine. Morgan can also be heard on the podcast Supernatural Circumstances with her co-host as well. She dives into numerous mysteries of the spiritual and fascinating things. She is all over, done so many great things. We're going to jump right into it. Please welcome my guest, Morgan Knudsen. All right, Morgan, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm awesome. I'm glad to be here and good to see you again.
Oh, awesome. I have been looking forward to this is going to be kind of part 2 of our original interview. I had you back on the Paranormal Spectrum, episode number 32, talking about like some paranormal stuff. We worked together on a television show, My Haunted Hometown, that came out head on for that. And you mentioned some Dogman stuff. And we got a little bit into it at the end of the episode. And it really got me excited. I'm really excited to hear more about it. And so I can't wait to delve into what we got today. So you had mentioned, we're going to start right into this. You had mentioned that there's a lot of folklore and legend and stuff from the indigenous people of Canada. And this really got me interested because here in the United States, we talk a lot about Bigfoot in the indigenous people and stuff. And there's not a lot of Dogman stories and legends and stuff that we hear. So you kind of seem to like have the opposite going on up there. So tell me all about it.
Yeah, I mean, here it kind of depends who you talk to. I taught with an Indigenous social work and psychology program post-secondary here for a good number of years, teaching parapsychology and teaching my program, Teaching the Living, and whatnot. So plus I've got a lot of Indigenous friends who are very, very interested in all things paranormal and Sasquatch and Dogmen, all of that stuff. Very, very interested in that. And so you get to talk to different First Nations groups, and every group kind of has a different teaching about it. Where some it's just no, that's just you don't discuss that, you don't talk about it, almost like the Wendigo here in Canada, where it's like keep your mouth shut. But there's a lot of others that don't feel that way at all. And there's stories of them not only I guess kind of like bonding with this species and this group, but treating them as trading partners. There's lore coming from different areas where they talk about them being actual trading partners back before the Europeans came to Canada. And that when the Europeans did come to Canada, the Europeans actually reported them being told, don't bother them. Like, if you're coming here, you want to talk with us, that's great, but don't bother the Dogmen. And they were very much considered just like you and I, just sort of another tribe that was existing in the area. And so it's really interesting. So everybody's kind of got a different take on it. I think some of it maybe transcends from the European influence coming in, which is maybe where some of the fear kicks in. It's hard to say. Like, there's no definitive stories that you can go back on. It's sort of what just has come down the pipe over the last couple hundred years since Canada was formed and the Europeans showed up here. So you hear different stories, especially from the Europeans saying, we were told up front, we don't talk about this, we don't bother them, and then different stories that have come out over the years. So it's definitely in there within Canadian culture. Again, it's not something that sort of sticks out. Like, I would say Sasquatch is definitely a more popular topic here as well, and whatnot. But if you ask enough questions and you dig around enough, you can definitely find the lore.
Very cool. That's awesome. Yeah. It's very similar to, like you said, with the Bigfoot, the indigenous people here in North America, in the United States, talk about being trading partners and, the brothers from the woods and stuff. So that's really interesting that, up there, you guys have the trading aspect in that with these creatures as well, or people, whatever they happen to be.
Yeah, and what's really interesting, what we found, I work closely with a amazing Indigenous woman here who's Métis, and her family goes right back. They were one of the original settlers in St. Albert, actually, where, if anybody knows the Swift Runner story, that's where Swift Runner ended up showing up after he'd murdered his family. And her family were the original settlers there. And she comes out often with me to do this research. And what's been very interesting is that we always start the evening with doing a smudge with sage and sweetgrass and whatnot, and not for a sense of protection, but actually for giving back, this sense of saying thank you. We start out with gratitude. Thank you for allowing us to be here. We really appreciate this opportunity. We're here for whatever, but just, we're very grateful to the land and to something bigger than ourselves and whatnot. And what's really interesting about that is that methodology, and coming at this from that state of gratitude, we have had more and more and more encounters doing that than just coming out blazing with cameras and being crazy, but actually just beginning with gratitude and saying, like, we're happy to be here. We would love to see you and have an interaction. You don't want to be here, that's okay. But starting off with that gratitude and those traditional Indigenous practices, I've found extremely, extremely helpful.
Interesting. So when you talk about like the stories and stuff that they have, when they talk about these beings, do they talk about them more like a werewolf creature, like on all fours, or like a dog body that stands upright? Or there's a lot of stories like Christopher Columbus and some other travelers and stuff talk about these humans with the head of a dog. So what are you hearing from that?
Yeah, very, very similar. Definitely not on all fours. Usually, yeah, the dog man, like so almost upright, canid with wolf's head, to the point where people have mistaken them for wolves when they are on all fours, or if they get down on all fours. So yeah, and based on experiences that I've had, experiences that she's had, it's always been upright. And yeah, I would say that would be the most accurate description. What I've heard come down in the lore has been the same. No ability to speak in terms of like a language, like English language. Lots of barks and grunts and huffs and dog noises that come from them. But definitely very curious, very, very keen to connect under the right energy.
Interesting. I had a question. Now it just trailed off. Is there any lore and stuff about, are they shapeshifters, or are they always one body style? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I don't know in terms of the indigenous history about that. I'm not sure, but I can tell you from experiences that I've had where there definitely seems to lean into the non-physical side. Whether or not I would call them a shapeshifter, I don't know. I don't think so. I've only seen two different states, which is the physical state that you'd expect, and almost like a black like smoke that seems to come in. But I've never heard of them shapeshifting into another animal, or parodying a person or anything like that. It's what you see is what you get with them, and at least that's been my experience.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like a lot of the Dogman stories that you hear, like the reports and that, you never, well, I don't want to say never, but 99% of the time I would say it's always one being. Like it's a dog creature that you see. You never see a human transform into it, like the werewolf trope. But I do know there's a lot of indigenous stories in that, with the shamans that can transform from human to different animals and stuff. So depending on what tribe and stuff you're dealing with.
Yeah, and typically both like in Canada and the States, that's usually associated with something like skinwalker or something like that, where there's a deliberate transformation into a predatory animal and whatnot. But that's definitely not been my experience with this. It's interesting. When I was doing a number of live shows, this would have been, I guess, last year. I have a really neat show about cryptids, and we talk about that in the theaters and stuff like that. And I've had indigenous people come up to me and ask me that question, like, is that what you're talking about here? And I said, and I honestly don't believe that. I think that's something different. I think where the transformation element may come from is stories from the Métis Cajun side, which is the Rougarou and things like that, where it's said that somebody is cursed, and it takes bloodletting in order to remove the curse. Somebody has to cut them and whatnot. And you see those in the southern states and stuff like that, because there's a very unique tie-in history between the Cajun tradition, like the French, and the Métis. So I don't think it's the same thing. I can definitely see maybe one phenomenon getting labeled as something and the lore springing up around it. One thing that I've noticed throughout all the years that I've been doing this is that many times when you hear a folklore story like the Rougarou or something like that, oftentimes it's grounded in some sort of phenomenon that's real. And you kind of have to go back and try to figure out what it is, because usually the story that's built up around it is probably probably fictitious. But when you go back, you can usually find a trace of the phenomenon in there somewhere. Case in point, the Jersey Devil is a really good one. I mean, I don't think there's too many people that believe, Mother Leeds had the demon child and the demon child grew wings and flew up the chimney, right? Like we're pretty sure that probably didn't happen. But when you start to go back and you look at things that have happened in the area, people have legitimately seen something. And there's been a lot of talk about, especially the newspaper articles and things like that. What was really interesting was that the stories and whatnot in that case actually came first before the newspaper articles. And I mean, way back, like talking about the First Nations people, because the original name for the Pine Barrens, and the name escapes me right now, but actually is about dragons. It's called basically it's known as the Place of the Dragon. Now that was named long before the newspaper articles came back saying there's something weird in the Pine Barrens. So, and then all of a sudden you get the story that like crops up around it to like explain the lore, right? And whatnot. But when you go back and you trace it back through history, you realize that like there's a story that's there. Or that predates that. And I think that's what we're getting with a lot of the Dogman stuff as well, is sometimes you get this lore that creeps up around something that people have legitimately seen and had interactions with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you brought up New Orleans and all that, and it kind of, I didn't put the connection together that, a lot of the Canada and stuff is French influenced. And then you have down in Louisiana, you have a lot of the French influence as well. And you have a lot of Dogman interactions and stuff with the Rougarou down in Louisiana. And that's really interesting that you can tie those two kind of locations together. Do you have what do they call these things up in Canada there? I
think Dogman is probably the sort of the blanket term. I'm not even sure they had a term before that. It's just kind of been what us crypto folks have kind of thrown on it, I think. There's I mean, I don't even necessarily know if they had a specific term for it, but I know and I mean it probably depends on which language you're using and which culture you're talking to, right? I mean, we have so many different cultures here in Canada. Like it's extensive. Everything from the Blackfoot, the Sioux, the Cree, the Métis, it goes on. So and each one has its own culture, has its own traditions, it really depends, I think. But I think the label doesn't necessarily mean as much as just paying attention to what the phenomenon is. And that goes throughout with parapsychology just in general. Everybody's got a label for everything. Oh, it's this and it's that, and they're fighting over labels. But really, when you start to look at all the phenomenon, you can always trace it back to basically something that's happening that's cross-cultural.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, you see that, even in the United States, all over, all like the Bigfoot, you have so many different names for the same creature, and each state has its own local one, and going back into history and stuff. And that's always, but again, they're all the same thing. So, do you have any, like, I don't want to say like famous, but any like, notable sightings or specific locations? Like here in Wisconsin, we have Elkhorn, we have the Beast of Bray Road, and everybody's familiar with that specific creature. Do you have anything like that with the Dogman up there?
We don't have really anything like that anywhere in Canada, interestingly enough. And I think part of it is a cultural thing, where the US is very much opt to celebrate when they have something going on, right? Like they're very excited about it. And it's like, oh my gosh, we have this cool thing happening. Come see it. Total opposite here. Here it's like, oh my God, something's going on. Don't talk about it. Nobody talks about it. Very, very different, almost more of a UK European attitude about that kind of a thing. And I think it probably is the UK influence on the culture here, but it's very, very different. So when you're an investigator here, you really, really do have to go hunt for stories. You have to talk to people. Like if you put a notice out and say, has anybody seen anything? Your odds are you're going to get maybe one or two people come forward. But unless you go door knocking, you're probably not going to hear a thing. Nobody wants to stir the pot So there's definitely hot spots here, especially at like central Alberta, and into the southern Alberta. And I'm sure there's more. I know like up north, we've got a plethora of Sasquatch in places like Nordegg and whatever. But yeah, like we don't necessarily have a place where it's like, oh my God, you have to go to this place because there's so many things going on. And again, it's just, I think, just cultural.
Interesting. All right. Well, we have danced around this long enough. So you've had some encounters. You've gone out on some expeditions, and now that we got our basis done here, and we can kind of move into this. So, what got you interested in specifically going out and researching these creatures?
Oh my gosh. I think cryptozoology is something I've always had an interest in. And I used to be one of those people that I think had these things sort of cordoned off in my head. Like there was parapsychology, and then there was cryptozoology. And the more you go along in parapsychology, you realize there's no dividing line between anything. So I think one of the things that really brought me to it was understanding that once you get that everything is consciousness, that you really are investigating only one thing. That's it. Like it doesn't matter what field you're in, whether it be ufology or that's it. You're investigating one thing, and that is consciousness. So I think that was the first bit of understanding for me to wrap my head around. And I think this was one of those things that I hadn't explored yet. It was something new. And then when I got a report from about 45 minutes or so outside of the city that I live in, and going down there and talking to the people that experienced it, I mean, it was just you couldn't help but want to know more. Like you have to know more about what's going on. So that was kind of the initial thing for me to pursue it.
So was that a specific Dogman report, or was that a Bigfoot, or?
No, it was a Dogman that ended up showing up at a sort of an acreage outside of a place called Millet here in Alberta, and it was a really interesting story. It was the first that I'd ever heard of any sort of Dogman, anything out here. And so I was really, really intrigued, came out because they saw it and it was quite close. It showed up in their truck, and it was like on the back of their truck. And it was very, very interesting to me that it got as close as it did.
Mm-hmm.
And then the more you talk to the people in and around the neighborhood, and when I say neighborhood, I'm talking acreages. So these guys are quite far apart from one another. But the more you started talking to people, the more people were like, oh yeah, no, I saw it in my yard, or I saw it. It plucked off one of my sheep, or everybody had a story about it. At one point it got into a chicken coop in the neighbor's house and, ate the chickens and, untied the chicken coop with fingers and, pulled the chicken, ate the chickens and took off. So the more you started to talk to people, the more you realize that stuff was going on and whatnot, but nobody really knew what it was. Like some people had seen it, but a lot of people were like, we don't know what's causing this. Like we don't, so they didn't really know. And it started us off to try to figure out, okay, what is it? Can we see them? How many are there? Of course, all the questions open up and whatnot. And next thing you know, we found ourselves down there almost every weekend, taking a look and seeing and tracking this down and seeing what we could see. And it turned out to be an incredibly magical thing. And I'm so grateful that we took the time.
Wow. So so I'm assuming this is your main focus of research area right now, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely seasonal. We find them far more active in the spring, summer, fall, than we do in the winter time. Possibly because there's less tree coverage here and our winters are very long. So, I mean, we're looking at winter for anywhere from November till sometimes April. I mean, it's northern Canada. That's what you're getting. So you kind of have this limited window and whatnot. But what we've found, and with the interactions with them that we've had, we've found a very sweet, peaceful culture within them. very, very shy, very curious, wanting to connect, very cautious, and I mean, they exist. You know, people say, well, we don't know, or they exist, telling you. And yeah, as I say, there's been a lot of lessons that have come from the interactions that we've had with them. And I think they were just as impacted by colonialism as the First Nations people here in Alberta. I think that impact of what happened here, and just a brief rundown for the listeners that are tuning in that may not know a bit about Canada. But when the Europeans actually came into Canada, many of the First Nations people were like not only killed, many were kidnapped. The buffalo population here, which was their main hunting, their main food source, was absolutely decimated on purpose. Severe impact, anyway. Severe, not to get too far into it, but it was severe impact, colonialism. And I think that impacted what happened with the Dogman, the culture that seems to be in existence here. So very cautious about people.
Rightly so. I think, yeah. And that kind of goes for all the like Bigfoot and stuff that we hear about too. You know, we hear stories of like the indigenous people in the United States that when the colonizers and stuff came over, that the native people just said, you know, hey, stay away from this, you know, don't use fire anymore because that's how they're tracking us. And, you know, you hear a lot of those stories as well from here for the Bigfoot and stuff. So
yeah, it's we don't think about it like that, I think, because the TV has this wonderful way of painting them as monsters. You know, It's so funny because it wasn't that long ago. I can't remember what show I was watching. I was Monsters and Mysteries in America when that was still. Remember when that was still on? So they did an episode on Beast of Bray Road, and I think they did the Michigan Dogman at some point as well, whatever. And every time they recreated a scene from somebody's encounter, the damn thing looks like a gargoyle. Like it's horrific. Like it looks horrific, and it's like snarling, and it's got blood on its face, and it's like, it's terrifying. And every single, probably one of the most impactful encounters that I've had with these things, and I've only seen the face of one once. That's how careful they are with people. I've only seen the face once, and it was, what I got the feeling was a very deliberate unveiling, but careful. And honest to God, it was the most beautiful face I've ever seen. It like, if you picture the most gorgeous wolf you've ever laid eyes on, with like this like thick fur, with the, you know, a dark, almost salt and pepper gray black fur, with like lighter gray under here and in the muzzle. Stunning. Like, I mean, this guy, you could have slapped him on the cover of National Geographic and everybody, you know, I mean, it's just beautiful. And, you know, and so going back on these shows and the episodes, and you're watching them being portrayed as these like horrific things. And it's, I mean, at this point, it's egregious and insulting. So it's no wonder people are, you know, painting them with this, they're evil, they're this, that, and the other. It's not true. It's media influence.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's either two sides of this story. There's the horrific, you know, horror movie side of them, or you have like the Twilight series, and then you go down that other whole story of the Dogman and people interactions that we're not going to talk about today. But
yeah, well, and not only that, but like I've heard a number of people that have seen them. I believe there's a fellow that reported seeing them at the Land Between the Lakes and whatnot. And he came forward and said, you know, I was reading scripture, and they walked away because I started reading from the Bible, and they walked away. Yeah, well, no shit. Like, I hope I'm allowed to say that on here. No shit. But like, you've got a group of beings that were severely impacted by that Catholic influence, right? Coming into their territory, especially here. It was the same thing in the US. You know, you're going to pull out the stuff that they've learned is like, no go, right? And it's like, and then they can't figure out why they're walking away. Like, are you kidding me? Like, are you kidding me? It's, I mean, this is, to me, that you if you could trace back in history as to what's gone on, their responses are blatantly obvious to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your sighting of these things. Walk us through, like not where you went, but going out there and stuff, and how the whole interaction took place.
Yeah, we've had a number of them. And as I say, starting with the right mindset has been absolutely key. Being in a grateful mindset. We're not going out there gonna, guns blazing, cameras roaring. In fact, the times that we've brought cameras out, there's almost every time there's been nothing happen. So I think there is an awareness of intention. I think not necessarily that they may know what the camera is, but I think there's a very strong awareness of intention. The best responses that we've had has been going out with nothing other than maybe an offering of something, whether it be food or tobacco or something that you would trade, and just going out and being prepared to be patient, being prepared to sit. We've noticed that they seem to have moved locations over the years. So sometimes when they move, it's a bit of a challenge, because it's like, okay, they've bedded up somewhere else. But it started where we had workshops that were going on at the time, and out in these areas, teaching people how to look for cryptids. We were teaching, like, looking for tree breaks, understanding what snow load was versus something that's actually been broken. So just teaching people about just general cryptozoology, because it's cool. And what was really interesting is that once we kind of learned, okay, well, there's dogmen or whichever in the area, I would be out waiting for people to arrive, and the sun would be going down, and I would start talking to the trees, which at the time I kind of thought were it was an empty woods. But I thought, what the hell, I'm gonna put the invite out there. So I would stand out there waiting for people, and I'd just talk to them, and I'd say, you are so welcome to be here, and if you want to come out, you're more than welcome to join. And so this went on for a little while, and lo and behold, first night, I was standing there with the group, and I was talking to them. I was explaining something, and somebody pointed over our shoulder and said, "What is that?" And everybody turns and looks, and what's in the trees, or in just too high for it to be a person, were these shining off-white eyes, and they were shining like Christmas tree lights, like not like eye shine, like bright. And I thought, oh, that's so interesting. We watched it for a little while, and you could see him, like, you could see them moving, and everybody was kind of running through their head, like, what could we possibly be seeing? Maybe it's like, I don't know, some like lights up there, like, what are we looking at? And all of a sudden we're looking, and we saw him blink, and it was like, no, that's something he's looking at, like, something is there. So anyway, since that point in time, they joined us every single time we were out, and they would follow us from the tree line, because we were out in the woods, out in this dense wooded area, and there was a trail, and we'd be on the trail, and you could hear them walking beside the trail, and you'd see the eyes pop up. Every time we'd stop, we'd see the eyes pop up, and we'd be like, okay, time to go to the next stop. And it got to the point where I would say, okay, come on, let's go, we're gonna go to the next stop. And you could hear them run ahead. They knew by that point where we were going. And the one night we had come out getting ready for the group, and there was sort of this great big field area in the one spot we were holding these, with a fire pit. And we had come out the one night, and we had previously been starting at the fire pit. We were going to start somewhere else this particular round, but we previously started at the fire pit. And we come out, and lo and behold, what's beside the fire pit, down flat, because sometimes what we found is that they sit quite low to the ground. Wolves do the same behavior. They get right flat down with their ears back. And we come out, and we look over, and what caught our eyes was the two was the two eyes because they're so bright in the dark, and he's flat down beside the fire pit waiting for us to come out. And everybody in the group just lit up. It was like, because we had just finished talking about them 2 minutes before we left the house. So we had this group of about 19 people that were like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, are you seeing this? And he looked around and looked at us and looked at the group, and then he sort of slunk off in behind this great big pile of firewood that was there and disappeared. Never saw which way he went, just vanished. And then again, they were with us for the rest. So that was very, very intriguing. The night that I saw one as clear as I did, I was out again. We had the group with us, probably had about 13 people, and we had heard them. We hear a lot of deep howls when we're out there, especially if it's dinner time. And the howl is very distinct. It's almost like a yell that's underneath the howl. It's very distinct. It's not a wolf. It's not a coyote. It's not a dog. You can't miss it. People are like, oh, it's a bunch of coyotes. No. This is something completely different. And so we were hearing the howling because we could hear a pack of coyotes on the other side of the road, and coyotes seem to attract them. So I think that's likely dinner. We would hear the coyotes on the other side of the road, and then we would hear the howling from them way off on our side of the road. And at that point I had said, okay, we're going to wrap this up, because I'm like, you never know how animals are when they're riled, right? So I'm like, let's just not cause a problem. We're going to be in the way. Let's get out of here. So we ended up sort of coming back around the trail and back down the driveway of this acreage. And this probably took us about an hour and a half to get around the whole property. And so we're coming back up the trail, and we look over, and again, we see the two lights in the woods, and everybody stopped, and we saw two more pop up, one on either side, and we've gotten to know that there's about 6 of them. And at this point we could only see 3, but when the one would show up, we would always see one or hear one on the side, each side. Like, you were always getting watched. Like, there was never a point where you're not being watched, never threatened, but they're careful, right? So anyway, so we're looking at this one, and this one in particular, who I think was the same one that we had seen at the fire pit weekends prior, he was looking and looking and looking, and I got the sense that, and this was just intuition, I got the sense that he was trying to connect. Like, when you've got an animal that's wants to convey something, and they look at you, like really, really look at you, and that was what I was getting. So instead of telling everybody to go back inside or whatever, I took a few steps closer to the woods, and I just started talking as if I was talking to, I have a little snake at home, Galen, and I started talking to this being the same way I would talk to Galen. And I mean, my heart's beating out of my chest. I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like, okay, here we go. Like, we invited them. We can't turn around and, not entertain this at this point. And I said, we thank you so much for being here. Thank you for coming. Thank you so much. And just going on like that, just in a very gentle tone, very like friendly, probably overly friendly. And lo and behold, as if we didn't start to see the eyes doing this, and nobody could figure out what was going on. And then we realized he's walking, and the walking is causing his head to sway. And I realized he's coming over. And everybody, we'd prepped everybody so well beforehand and just said, everybody knows, don't run. You don't, because that's antagonizes predatory behavior. If you run, they're going to chase you. Like, and they likely don't have ill intent, but if you run, don't run when there's a predator. You just keep, because it does triggers those instincts. And that's another thing I hear about often in a lot of these dogmen encounters. Immediately people turn and run. You never do that with any predatory animal. So anyway, we're watching him, and the closer he's getting, he's maintaining eye contact. And I think it was the impression that I got from it, and I could be dead wrong about this, but the impression that I got from it was no surprises. You see me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you see me, I'm coming here. And we watched, and he got close enough that you could start to see his face, and you could see the light from his eyes was so radiant. You could see this part of his face. And it was, and as I say, it's the most beautiful face you'd ever see. Is stunning. And he got close enough that, I mean, everybody was just in awe. The other two seemed to stay where they were. And then on a neighboring property, a dog started to bark. I guess the dog started to clue in that there was predator in the woods. Dog starts to bark. Immediately their attention turns, just bam, abrupt. And they heard the dog and they were gone. They just shot off down the other side. I think it just spooked them enough that it was like, oh no, that's too much input. And they took off. It was phenomenal. And since then we've had more experiences. We've had more encounters. Each one, I think that was probably the highlight of them, but each one has been a different experience in its own right. And in different places, within about a half-hour radius of these other locations. Like, they all seem to be within about a half-hour radius of each other, these different encounters. So that you can kind of tell where they're going a little bit. Like, you can kind of figure out, okay, this is where they are at this time of year versus that time of year, and so on and so forth. But yeah, just absolutely amazing encounter. Never ever felt threatened. Like, never did I feel, oh my God, this is, definitely intimidated, because I mean, when you've got something like that, I mean, you can't help, but your instincts are kicking in, saying like this is a predator, like, it's a predator. But never ever once did I feel threatened. It was incredible.
That sounds like it.
Yeah.
Wow. So let's get some more information on this. So you've seen about 3 of them at a time. You said there's about 6, but 3 of them at a time. Do they all have the same color eye shine, or
no?
No.
And that's one of the reasons why we could tell them apart, because we haven't physically seen them very many times. It's very difficult. They keep a low profile even when they're sort of in your vicinity. But we've had one with red eye shine. We've had one with we've had 2 with off-white, and we know there's 2 because we saw both of them at the same time. And one with amber eyes. And the one with amber eyes is quite a bit smaller than the other ones. We had one sighting where he actually showed up in a sort of we have a lot of back roads here in Alberta because it's prairie, very similar to Wisconsin, where it's a lot of prairie. So you'll often get country roads that don't have really anything around, but you'll come up to like an intersection, no lights, just intersection. And we had one witness come forward and say that she saw the one with the amber eyes at the intersection, and it came up to her truck. And he was roughly around 6 feet, which for this particular group is small. But he actually came up to the truck, didn't bother anybody, but came up to the truck and then again disappeared. So yeah, so you kind of get to know who's who, like a little bit. You kind of know who's who. Yeah, the one with the off-white eyes definitely seems to be the alpha. He's there. He usually is the one that, if you're going to have an interaction, he's usually the one that's you're going to see. But yeah, just you kind of get to know everyone after a little bit.
So the one that came up to the truck, was that standing on 2 legs or on all 4s?
2 feet.
2 feet.
Yeah, he was 2 feet.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
So how tall do you think the other ones are? How tall was the one that you saw the face?
Oh geez. When we initially thought definitely over 6 feet. We initially thought that it was large. When we actually went down into the woods the next day to figure out where the floor was, because oftentimes in Alberta you kind of get these like stands of trees, and so you'll be on the road and then there's like a culvert, and then it sort of goes off. So sometimes it can be very hard to see how deep that culvert is and how far back it goes. So we were very interested to go back in there and just see where he was standing, and he was significantly bigger, very much so, 8 feet for sure. You see, he was large, definitely the biggest out of the group.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you go out there with respect. You don't go with cameras blazing and all that, like you said. Have you tried to get a picture? Do you use flashlights? Have you ever used thermal? Have you gotten any like kind of visual with these?
Yeah, the only photos that I've been able to catch haven't been really photographs. It's actually been me walking with a camera facing behind me. Because when we were doing the groups, the one male seemed to be very almost like it was not only curious about what we were doing, but watching over to make sure things were going okay, which I found was really interesting. Like I felt very protected, almost like we had become familiar enough that we were part of the pack. Mm-hmm. And it was, so he would stay to my right, usually to my right behind me by about, I would say 15 feet. And because I would often be at the back of the group to make sure we weren't getting any stragglers. So I was sort of privy to what was going on behind everybody. And I could hear something following because the footsteps are pretty loud. And I started with my phone or something that was going to be inconspicuous, doing this kind of behind me and I mean, you get a lot of jiggly video and, whatever, but I just wanted to make it as inconspicuous as possible. And going back through the footage, we ended up capturing 2 photos, which are pretty distinct, of the face, the same face that I saw in the woods when I saw him, and the eyes were what stood out to make us stop the film footage and be like, oh, right there. Oh, can see the eyes right there. And they're too far up in a tree to be, a coyote or anything like that. I mean, mm-hmm. it's too far up and whatever. So I've kept those photos very, very near and dear to me. For people that are looking for them online, you're not going to find them. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you briefly why. One of the things that I've learned in parapsychology, and this is going to go to everybody that's ever caught a photo of Dogman, Bigfoot, anything. What's really interesting, and one of the misnomers in parapsychology is that, if you have some sort of specialized camera, then the camera is going to capture stuff you can't see. And that's not how cameras work. Cameras work because they are actually capturing what you see. They can't see past your spectrum of vision. And so if you catch something, what does that mean? Well, it means when you catch something on camera that's not there, that is, a loved one or something like that, then what you're likely getting is a deliberate psychic impression on the camera. You're not getting something that the camera's got magic vision and is seeing something you're not saying. The camera doesn't function like that. So, and any good photographer will tell you this. And so what you're getting is something that's deliberate. And I feel that those photos were a gift. I think they were deliberate. I think they were, I think there was some knowledge of what was going on there. And don't ask me the mechanics of it. I don't have a damn clue. But I think that's one of the reasons why nobody's got pictures of a lot of this stuff.
Interesting. So do you, you're out hiking in the woods. Do you allow people to bring flashlights? Do you allow, thermals or video or anything like that? Or is it more we're going out there to just have the experience?
Yeah, I don't do the workshops anymore. And I'm quite satisfied with that. Now it's just myself and a few other people that have gotten to know this, how to do this. And so we don't bring a whole hell of a lot anymore. I've usually got my phone on me. I've usually got like some semblance of camera on me. Very rarely are they on. Some of the areas are a little bit on the risky side. I mean, this is backcountry, right? This is backcountry Alberta. It's not that there's no risk to it. You've got people out there with shotguns. You've got people out there. I mean, there's risk to going out to some of these locations, but it's usually it's bare minimum what we take. We're not looking for evidence. We're looking for the connection. We're looking for to build the relationship, because I think that's what they're looking for. I mean, they don't give a shit who believes this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care. But they're what we've uncovered is that they're very, very deeply looking for connection, and I think to maybe even to reestablish, a bit of what they had before all the crazy happened, 100 plus years ago. But yeah, I think to us, it's really about going and respecting what these beings are, what they want. I mean, we're coming into their territory. If they want us out, we're out. So we're not really after the best photo or the photos are great. Like that would be lovely. And then, they'd hang on my wall next to the other ones, but, it's not needed. I think when you can sort of put the ego down and, you realize, I think the level of trust that is being garnered with something that will come up to you like that. You just put the damn camera down. You have to.
Cool. Have you ever been able to record any of the audio of the howls?
Lots of times. We've got lots of. We had a really interesting encounter. This would have been last, I want to say May. It was last May or June, and there was a bunch of us that had gone out to this one area that we've come to know that they hang around quite frequently, and we heard what we're pretty sure was them hunting, and it was graphic to say the least, but it was so interesting. And my friend, she's out there with me often, she had her camera running. Now this is really intriguing. So she had her phone on, just a little recording app, like voice recording app. Mm-hmm. And she was trying to get this voice recording app to work because we were hearing so many animal noises around us. We knew that there was something going on because like the birds were kind of going nuts. The like stuff was, she's like, I'm going to stick the recording thing on. The phone kept telling her, can't record. Sorry, can't record. Sorry, can't record. And she was like, okay, I'm not meant to put this on. I'm not going to do it. I'm sorry. Put her phone in her pocket. So the next little while, we start hearing these coyotes on the other side of the road. Now remember, there's like woods on both sides. So we're in one side of the woods. There's woods and a farm on the other side. And we start hearing coyotes, and we start hearing all of a sudden cows start to go nuts, like mooing, like just so upset. And so we're standing there listening to this chaos, and the coyotes, interestingly enough, were not running towards the cows. They were running other way. They were going away from the cow. As soon as we heard the coyotes starting to run the other direction, we hear our howl from the other side, and it just lets this howl rip. And I think it was like, oh, we've been spotted, go. And so we hear this howling, and the coyotes lose their absolute minds. And next thing you know, we hear silence. Nothing. Cows quit. Everything stopped. Birds quit. Everything stops. So we're standing there going, they got dinner. Like they caught dinner. And the coyotes, we then started hearing way, way, way off in the distance. They were like long gone. They're just like, we're out. We're done. They're long gone, way down the road at that point. But we all looked at each other and we thought, well, that was just incredible. Like that was really, really incredible. So anyway, long story short, the next day comes up, and my friend Alicia, she'd been on her phone or whatever. And she says, you're never going to believe this. She said, I got it recorded. And I said, you got to be kidding me. And she said, no. She said, I don't know how the hell this taped, because she said, I mean, we all saw her trying to get this damn thing to activate, would not. And she said, I got the whole damn thing. And it was a bit scritchy and scratchy because the phone now had been in her pocket, but you could hear everything that had gone on. And I firmly believe to this day that we would not have caught it had she not said, I'm sorry, we're not going to record this. Again, it was like, we know your intentions, or you're not going to exploit this. So here you go. But yeah, so we've kept that one pretty close. It was a phenomenal evening, but that was a lesson.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Do you have any of the howls or anything that are out publicly, like that people can listen to at all? Or?
We don't. We keep them pretty close to the vest. But the howls, you can hear similar audio. I know there's been audio released from places like Land Between the Lakes and things like that. Same howl. I mean, it's unmistakable. It's like it's like a roar. Like it's so deep. It's so loud. It's not a ooh that you would expect to hear from a wolf or something. It's coming from a much bigger set of lungs than and whatever. But it sounds like all the other ones that you've heard, over the years. It's that's how you kind of know what it is. Like it's just mirror image of ones that you hear all over the U.S. and whatever. So, yeah, but I keep the evidence close to the vest. And I mean, and a lot of people will be like, well, that's because you don't have any or whatever. As I say, I'm not concerned with that. I mean, people can take it or leave it, but it's you put stuff out there now anyway, and everybody's going to tell you it's fake. Mm-hmm. I don't have time for that. It's not what I'm in this for. So.
Absolutely. No, I get that. Yeah. You put out the clearest picture, anything of a Bigfoot or something, and people are going to still say it's AI. And there's so many people trying to pass AI as, real stuff. And
it's getting ridiculous. And I mean, it's at the point now, as I say, like, I mean, I've been in this field for over, it's almost about 23 years. And I hit the point long ago where I just stopped slapping stuff out there and whatever. I'm just not in it for that anymore. And, often if I'm doing a live show or presentations and stuff like that, I'll include stuff. Like I've got the photos are in one of my live shows where I can actually stand there and talk about this properly, and tell the story. Cause my main motivation, and even doing this show, my main motivation, anytime I get a chance to talk with the Dogman, is to start to dispel the damn myths that these are violent, terrible creatures, because I can't listen to it. It's absolute ridiculousness. And I'll stand on my head to get that across, because it's, and maybe I feel so passionate about it because I mean, as I say, I've got a little python at home he's turning 21 in June, and he is the most dear, sweet, kind little man, who's incredibly bright. He's on my book cover back there as well. He ended up on my book cover. He is the sweetest little man, and I get the same crap from people, oh my God, you have a snake and they're gonna, aren't they gonna bite you? And is absolute garbage. And so I kind of have that same passion about these guys, where it's like, you have no understanding, and it's such ignorance to just not even take the time to understand, where these things are coming from. This is not an evil creature by any means.
No, I think that's a fair point. I think it's also worth pointing out that, animals and people, whatever these things happen to be, wherever they fall on the spectrum, and that no matter what it is, no animal is going to attack you without being provoked. But then, at the same time, you take that and you go out to like Yellowstone National Park, where these people that are, going up and hugging buffaloes and getting selfies with them and stuff. Here's, these big docile cows that are happy leaving anybody alone. And even something like that is going to, be pushed to its limits. And then when you do have these creatures like Bigfoot or Dogman, they're going to be docile and leave you alone and mind their own business unless you go out there shooting at them and having these problems. And I think that's where a lot of the times people have these bad interactions.
Well, and you bring up a really good point too, and that is guns and weapons. We had a really interesting incident. We did not find this out until after we had done the workshop, but the one workshop that we actually did that had nothing happen, and there was literally only one. We had gone out and we'd walked the trails that we normally would walk, and there was nothing that night. Nothing. Zero. Zip. It was so strange. And I could figure it out because it was like, okay, they're here. Like they were enjoying doing this as much as we were enjoying doing this. So we were like, okay, what the hell is going on here? Like, where are they? And lo and behold, later that night, we found out that the one guy had a hunter's knife in his pants, and we didn't know that. We couldn't see it. I mean, but it was one of the great big, the Boeing knives, right? Not out to harm anybody. Just this is backwoods Alberta. People hunt, right? Mm-hmm. And he had this Boeing knife sort of down his pant leg, and that was the only night that we never had anything happen. So they were gone. They knew they were gone. And when I hear stories of people that are like, oh, I was out hunting and I put my gun up and it challenged me, and it's just like, yeah, because you've got a gun in his face. Like, come on, people. Like, what are you thinking? Well, I put the gun up, or I was standing there with my gun and it was growling. Yeah, no kidding. Like, it just, these are so much guardians of I think the land, their space, their custodians. Interestingly enough, when you start to look at these legends in other cultures, such as Egypt or such as Ireland, you look at the Celtic werewolf. The Celtic werewolf is very much seen as the guardians of the forest, and it's always said that if you're lost in the woods, look for a dogman, because the dogman will help you. So you've got these beings that are very much the guardians of these areas. I think they've got a very deep spiritual connection to this, which I think is why they respond so strongly to intention. And then you're walking around there looking like you're going to blow somebody's head off. Like, I'm sorry, that's not how you come into this. And I understand, like, people that are out hunting that have had encounters where they've been, growled at and every single encounter that I've heard about, if you break it down, you can figure out what's happened. And it's not their fault. It's not their, and not to say it's a person's fault. Sometimes it's just a happenstance that, you run into these things. But if people would stop and take a look at their energy and how they're coming into this, like, you go into a house, for example, and this is sort of a off beaten track example, and somebody turns around to you and says, oh, I've got the friendliest dog you'd ever want to meet. But say you come into the house, you're terrified of dogs. You had a bad experience 20 years ago, whatever. You come in and you're afraid of that dog. How much you want to bet that dog's going to bite you by the end of the visit? They know, they know that something's not, it doesn't matter how friendly they are, but it's like your energy that coming into that space and coming into that encounter really, really matters. So if you turn around and you see it and you're terrified and your immediate reaction is terror, which I understand, because that's not something that you'd be expecting to see. But if you start reacting with terror and you pull out a gun and then you turn around and you add to the situation by running, activating those predatory instincts, now you've got another problem. You can start to break down why these encounters go south.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All very good points. Any person, any animal is going to be able to read off of that, whether they're, supernatural or normal or whatever. It's all energy. You can read people when you walk in a room and tell, what's going on. So,
when you're welcome somewhere, and, and animals know too. And I think, and these beings, and I trivialize them by sort of labeling them as animals, because I really don't think that they are. I think there's something far beyond that. But you made a really good point there, where these beings are very, very aware. And I had somebody that I used to know a number of years ago. Well, I don't know why why cats don't like me. I hate cats. Well, what are they supposed to do with that energy? What are they supposed to do with that energy? Like, if you came into a room and somebody just said, I hate that guy, like, what exactly are you supposed to do with that energy? It's just, again, it's just this ignorance. It's this lack of understanding that there is a reciprocal relationship that's going on here. You have a responsibility once you're in that interaction to be a good custodian. Just in the same way, if I was to run into a bear in the middle of Jasper Park, it's like you have the ability to conduct yourself in a certain way, and things are either going to go south or they're not going to go south. But it's like you've got a role in that relationship, and people really need to understand that. Absolutely.
Well, we are coming up here on the end of the show. I appreciate your time so much. I appreciate all your thoughts and sharing this with us. It's great to have this other side of it, that these things aren't the monsters that you see on television and all these shows and stuff. And again, it boils down to how you're treating them and how you want to be treated, and having those interactions that are beneficial to both of us and everyone involved. But so you don't do your expeditions publicly anymore. What do you got coming up? Do you have any speaking engagements or new books coming out? What's going on with you?
Oh gosh. So, the main focus is my podcast, Supernatural Circumstances, with my co-host Mike Brown, and we are always just trying to put the good word out for for the world of consciousness research, whether it be Dogman or the very recently, speaking of animals, we actually had on a fellow by the name of Dr. Edward Bassingthwaite from Australia. For many people will know him as the Healing Vet on social media, and he talks about exactly what we're talking about here. He's a veterinarian, and he's just a remarkable person that uses intuition and basically in parapsychology and connection to look after animals, and teaches people how to have a better connection. So that's the type of show the Supernatural Circumstances is. You're not going to get these horror stories that are on there. It's all just like high educated people who are wanting to change other people, help facilitate our connection with the unknown, and just generally be awesome. People can find Supernatural Circumstances wherever you podcast. We're Spotify, iHeartRadio, you name it, you can find it. But we'd love to have you join us. It's a fantastic show, and we promise it will be very uplifting.
Awesome. And I know you have 2 books out as well, at least 2 books out. You want to give everyone a rundown on those and where they can get them as well?
You betcha. So the first one that came out was Teaching the Living, From Heartbreak to Happiness in a Haunted Home. It's a guide to, you find yourself in a situation where you don't know what's maybe going on in your life, in your house, and you need guidance out. It starts with you. It doesn't start with trying to banish something out of your home. It starts with you. This is how you change your life. It's a lifestyle guide to understanding how to connect with spirit, with loved ones. It's a deep dive into parapsychology. This is not ghost hunters. It's a deep dive into parapsychology. And the other one is The Gift of Instinct, Paranormal Lessons for an Extraordinary World. And there's Galen. There he is on the front. And this one is about understanding that we all have the instinct to find something more, to connect with something more. And we go through cases. We talk about the greats of parapsychology and how you can find your purpose using skills from parapsychology, philosophy, breaking down some really, really interesting cases and the lessons that have come out of it that I have learned with over 23 plus years of doing this. So those are the 2 books, and you can get them pretty much anywhere books are sold, including Amazon.
Perfect. I'm pretty sure I have links to the podcast as well as both books in the show notes for you, for anybody interested as well. And like I said, you were a guest on the Paranormal Spectrum with myself, episode 35. If anybody wants to go back and hear more about the paranormal side of all the stuff you do and some of your experiences there as well. And definitely,
you can also find me on entityseeker.ca as well. So entityseeker.ca, all my videos, podcasts, links to the books and the show and the podcast is all there as well. So
perfect. Awesome. I'll make sure that is in the show notes. I think it is, actually.
It's a one-stop shop. It's like
that's why I like when people have link trees. I just put that in the show notes and I'm like, everything is right there. But I don't even have a link tree, so I don't, it is what it is. So but awesome. Thank you so much for coming on again. I really appreciate it. Like I said, I've been looking forward to this interview and hearing all about Dogman and your encounters and stuff. And I'm very happy with today's episode and your time and everything. So
thank you so much. This has been awesome as always. Yeah, call me anytime you want to do a episode.
Absolutely. Have you done Bigfoot expeditions?
They've kind of run into the Dogman expeditions actually, just simply because it's same areas, often same areas. So yeah, we've heard our fair share. Lots of whoops and tree knocking and all sorts of stuff. Never seen one. But the hunters in Alberta see them all the time. They're really, really prevalent here in Alberta. So eventually I think my time will come, but it hasn't yet. So, here here's hoping that that's going to happen. Maybe this summer will happen.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, let me know. We will have to have you come back and share some Bigfoot stories and stuff, and some of your research
Absolutely.
as well. And hopefully you'll see one, and we can chat about that as well. So
Crossing fingers.
very cool. Well, if you have anything else come up, new books or anything, let me know as well, and love to have you back
Will
again
do.
anytime. All right, you take care.
Sounds wonderful. Have a good one.
Yep, we'll see you later.
Bye.
All right, guys, this is our show for this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Remember to like, subscribe, and share all things here on the Untold Radio Network and Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society for all things involving myself and my team here in the United States. Check out the show notes for all things about Morgan and get all of her books and research, and check out her podcast as well. Until next time, guys, thank you all for tuning in, and I'll see you on the end.